Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 16 of the anime series Sakurada Reset. And this definitely proved to be a hell of an interesting episode, mostly revolving around what we find out to do with this cat from the Bureau, that he is working of his own accord, sort of beyond the ramifications and the rule system of the Bureau itself, seeking a means to his own ends, his own sort of selfish plans for the future of Sakurada, and he's called on it by Sumir, who goes ahead and meets up with him, which is very strange and interesting. It's almost by the end of this episode as if there are two operating Sumirs, and it's like, what the hell? I'm wondering what's going on here. Could it be that maybe Sumir never actually died those 2 years ago, and there's actually the legit one from 2 years ago, the elder version, if you will, and then there's the younger who was somehow manipulated into being taken out of a photograph, so there's two of her in operation. I'm just laying that flat out for you at the start of the video to ponder as we talk about the rest of this episode. But, you know, for the most part, I am not sure that what this Bureau cat wants to do is actually a bad thing. It seems like a lot of these people's lives have been impacted and hindered rather than helped, rather than aided. It hasn't made sort of a forward progression for them, happily so, with these abilities. Not in every single case. I mean, if we go back to the very first happenstance where the child was sort of cloned through the ability the mother had and everything when her firstborn had died, I guess there are good things that can come out of this, as we see how K and Haruki have been using that reset ability and his memory retention to help others and to, change things up so accidents aren't happening, people's lives are being saved, and this, that, and the other thing. There is arguably a cause for good with all of these abilities, but it has added this level of complexity to the entire surrounding area of Sakurada, where there's just as much danger around every corner as there is, helpful aiding aspects to those powers and abilities. So I call it into question, are we supposed to view this Bureau cat as being, like a villain of sorts, because he wants to bring everything back to a sort of normalcy? He wants to get rid of all these abilities. People would then be able to just live their normal lives, and the normal happenstances of their lives would go back to zero, in a sense, would be, equaled out to the rest of the world. Is it perhaps that he's trying to save the better part of Sakurada, and we're given the hints that, maybe there's something more ominous and nefarious about this, and that's misleading. That's not entirely true. I think it's definitely an interesting thing to be, made to contemplate at this juncture in the series, because of course we can herald K and Haruki and their, surrounding characters, Marase and everything like that. No, we can hail them as somewhat being protagonistic, being heroic even, to the effect that they've saved people and they've helped others and such like that. And so, of course, naturally, the knee-jerk reaction is to say, oh, well, anyone who wants to put a stop to that is got to be evil, right? But if those powers and abilities did not exist, like they don't in our real, everyday, living, breathing world, would things have become so discombobulated time after time like this in Sakurada? Would things have been so problematic in the first place if those powers didn't exist? I think that's a very interesting question, something to ponder, a quandary to really dwell on and think about as the course of these, next 3 episodes after this one tell out this tale. And I'm really kind of fascinated by the fact that, this guy is sort of the polar opposite to K. K has the memory retention. He can remember anything and everything, even after suffering resets. He'll still retain the memory of everything that happened, and living that time over again, he'll know what happened the first time and everything. I find that fascinating of the utmost accord to begin with. But then here this Bureau cat has memory cancellation abilities, which he uses on himself over and over and over again. He keeps journals to basically, equate back everything that he's experienced and all of the things he needs to remember and answers to questions he has, ponderances he has in living in this, environment with all of these powers and abilities. And this allows him to keep, 3 steps ahead of the game when they still contained the original witch she could probably have manipulated things if she were able to sense the future based around his mind. And in order to keep all that hidden, he wipes his mind, over and over and over again. And he has 2 journals, as we see. The cat with the lock fixture can apparently lock time just as well as he can lock the memories within the notebooks and everything. They can be unaffected by the reset. So if a reset happens, it's only for this lock guy to open the book for the bureau cat, and he can go back over and see what changed, what he missed, what has been edited out of his life and his mind and his memories. But the alternatively interesting thing about that is Sumir's ability. We finally gain the understanding of how her ability works, that future sense ability. It's not just sensing the future. It's sensing the future memories in the minds of the people who will go on to experience it later on. And that, to me, is absolutely fascinating. She's stonewalled and deadlocked from perceiving what exactly is going to happen directly related to the bureau guy when they're in their meeting, because he wipes his memory. She can't detect his future through his mentality, through his memories and things like that. And that spells out a very intriguing aspect, that all of her perception of the future, it is highly alterable. It's not locked in stone. We know this as a sure shot. She basically said the same thing, I think, in the last episode anyway. But here is the assurance. The other leg is finally dropped, that no, whatever future she perceives is only the perception of the future as remembered by people who will go on to experience it. And she has a sense of their future memories, not the actual future. So there's also the danger of, well, if she's reading the mind of somebody psychotic who is going to remember things very differently, very, very strangely, how is she going to perceive, the difference between that future reality that doesn't make any sense, a discombobulated reality, as compared to the genuine one? I guess she could probably read mind after mind and be able to whittle out which ones are probably likelier to be true, the futures that are likelier to happen, rather than ones that are probably false and things like that. But the fact that her sensations, this ability, is dependent upon what people will recall in the future and not what the future will itself be, this doesn't lock down any future that she might perceive. Anything can happen, that kind of thing. And just the fact that she had the balls to go and talk to this bureau cat, have a meeting with him, making herself become very vulnerable, but of course they're treating each other mutually as, saying the truth, being truthful with each other, because they both, equally have something to lose in this equation of their meeting, of their coming together. And it adds that extra layer if this Sumir has not been contacting K, and yet he's been receiving messages. And it's not through his buddy who can relay messages, telepathically. It's some other process that this is happening through. And that really leads me to believe there's got to be another Sumir out there. But there's also got to be another user, unless his buddy's lying for some reason, unless maybe he's working in cahoots with the original Sumir. There's got to be some process by which she has found someone else with that telepathy ability. And that's how she's utilizing, getting those messages to K. By the end of this episode, she's directing he and Haruki where to be for certain events that are happening. And I'm wondering if these events are things that the Bureau is orchestrating and they don't want to be found out about, or it's the cat from the Bureau who has that memory lockdown ability, that memory wipe ability. Maybe it's something he is doing. He's, trying to investigate how to bring about his penultimate plan to wipe out all the powers. And the original Sumir, if in fact there are the two, the one that was taken out of the photograph and the original, there's a very grand possibility that the original Sumir is, jabbing at them, is jabbing at the Bureau, is jabbing at this guy in particular. Of course, we don't as yet know why that would be, why she would have such a pointed, going after him and trying to, discombobulate whatever plans he's putting into action. But it's interesting that they were at the right place at the right time because Sumir led them there to pick up trash on the side of the road as a car accident happened, and that accident could have been part and parcel with some sort of nefarious plan revolving around, if not the Bureau, that particular Bureau guy himself. And it seems like this Sumir that's communicating to K telepathically is trying to get the ire, get the goats of that guy and his surrounding Bureau people. Now we see, of course, he's made a direct through line to K and Haruki's boss, Tsushima, for all intents and purposes, in that car ride at the end of the episode where the photograph Sumir, we'll call her that from now on, was in the car, and she bold-facedly says, no, I didn't tell Kay to be there. And there is the Bureau guy saying, I wonder why they were there at that particular time and place. What led them there? Who would have told them to be there? They wouldn't have known otherwise if they weren't told, and who told them? And this photograph Sumir is able to say, honestly, and it's perceived as being truthful, I didn't tell Kay anything. So immediately, that lends to the credibility of the fact that maybe there's another Sumir out there. Maybe the Sumir who allegedly died 2 years ago faked her death, which was one of my assumptions going back early on in the show. And somehow or other, that Sumir configured all of this, to bring out the photograph Sumir, that kind of thing. And that could be why after the little thing that transpires between K and Haruki in this episode, that could be why Sumir, the photograph Sumir, presumably, was back in her apartment, her hidden sort of hideout, that kind of thing, punching the bed, being very upset and saying to herself, it's all because of you. And we don't know who that you is, but maybe it's her other self that has manipulated things and is putting her through hell, because the original Sumir, she's happy-go-lucky. Everything is going exactly according to her plans, and it is her younger self, her photograph self, who is having to suffer for it. But she assures herself that it's only a few more days before this all comes to its end, whatever that means. So if we're to perceive any kind of actual villain, antagonist, it's back to square one as far as it being revolving thoroughly around Sumir or multiple Sumirs as being the most nefarious potential character in the midst of all of this. And then, hearkening back to that aspect I just mentioned between K and Haruki, I thought it was really sweet and beautiful how he calls her to the rooftop. They're not supposed to go there. Murase helps, finagle that so that he can meet Haruki on the rooftop. And he's been dwelling on the fact that Haruki really, truly, genuinely wanted to grow with him, and that was all wiped away because of the reset to do with Honoka and the dream world and all that kind of stuff, as Sumir went and pointedly jabbed in his face, at the end of that whole arc. And so it's interesting because arguably the motivations of K are in question. He talks about the relationship he has with Haruki as being, air quotes, fake. It seems as though he's acknowledging the fact that whatever relationship he has with her is more so revolving around the exploitation of her reset ability, and not so much his actually feeling romantically toward her as she is growing to feel about him. And his concern is about the play, which I'm very upset that we were robbed of seeing whatever this play was meant to be. I would have loved to have seen some sequences, some scenes from that play where they're supposed to be playing, the romantic leads, and there's a kiss between them and all this kind of stuff. I'm very upset we were robbed of seeing that. But it seems as though his bringing about, confessing in a sense, that he wants his relationship to be more with Haruki than just using that reset ability, than just, interacting with each other surrounding that ability and surrounding events that must be altered and things of that sort. He wants to be more personally connected to her, which is what she's growing to want. And it seems like his utmost chief concern there was to exploit her emotions to get her to be able to smile in the play, where she couldn't smile because she was harboring all of these ill emotions and conflicted emotions about how she was growing to feel about Sumir, how she was growing to feel about Kay, and everything like that. And I have to give her accolades and applause for coming straight out with it on the rooftop saying, I hate Sumir, I hate her, I hate the attention of yours she garners where I want that attention from you. You know, how she manipulates you so easily, and I'm like the second thought you ever have. She very bold-facedly said, I am being selfish, I understand this, but I want your attention. I don't want all that attention always going to Sumir. And I loathe her being in existence because she garners all of that attention from you, whom I want that attention from myself. So it was like, wow. You know, that I was thunderstruck that she came out with all of that and added much more bittersweetness to his confessing to her, I want memories, I want to make memories that we can share together. I want it to be beyond just the exploitative reset ability and however that ever, you know, needs to be utilized given the circumstances. Because I don't know if he's being truthful. I don't know if he's actually genuinely saying this is how he feels, or if it's his just putting on a show to bring about his own ends down the line, whatever that might be. I don't believe he harbors romantic feelings for Sumir, and I believe he pretty much cut the brass tacks of that with the telepathic message he sent to Sumir, which got the photographed Sumir so penultimately upset, punching her bed, as I say. But does he genuinely feel this closely attached to Haruki? Is he acknowledging that for his own genuine reason of sharing that, reciprocating that? Or is he just yet again exploiting her to whatever his own means might be? I don't know. But all in all, this was a fascinating episode. Growing with these characters and encountering so many mystifying scenarios, you know, revolving around them. This was another very plain stated episode. You could make sense of it without any sort of, you know, hand-holding or going back over it again. But it leaves you with the grand question, what are Sumir's actual motives? Are there more than one Sumir involved in the story? Is this bureaucrat who wants to, you know, equalize Sakurada and wipe out all of the abilities all told? Is he good? Is he bad? Is he somewhere in between? And what are K's motivations, especially as it relates to Haruki? Does he genuinely feel for her, or is he just using her? Is the question. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 16 of Sakurada Reset, if you've seen it as well, if you found it as compelling as I did, and interesting as I did, and what any sort of speculations or thoughts or reactions you have to everything that went down in it. So yeah, otherwise it'll be pretty much it for me on this. If this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.